I can't go to Wales and go and see my grandfather. I can't see any of my family. So the woman that you spoke to this morning, I've completely forgot her name.
Right. Romilly was the lady's name.
Yeah, that's it. So her thought plan to send vaccines elsewhere in the country, and then send some back to us as well. Right?
Yes.
What on earth are you going to allow other countries to get better before us?
Well, the alternative argument, Seamus, is that should the rich countries be able to get in first, and effectively rich people live, and sadly, poorer people die.
I just cannot understand it. I just don't understand why you'd let your own people suffer to help somebody else before your own house is in order. It genuinely saddens me.
The money is paid for by taxes that you pay, that I pay, that our relatives and loved ones pay. Why can't it therefore help our fellow countrymen and women, is what my argument would be.
And then we're now going to be paying it back for years.
Yeah, oh man. I don't know if you have them, but your grandchildren's children will be. Seamus, look after yourself. Good luck with your family. I can hear the frustration in your voice. I do hope. Actually, we're going to be looking at that later in the show, aren't we? The idea of lockdown might not ease over Christmas. I just hope, because you've got family that you want to see, that it does. 8:41. Tim will talk with you about this in a moment. But to other matters, a story actually we've featured on a couple of occasions in the past. A transgender man lost his legal battle to be registered as his child's father or parent in the UK after the Supreme Court refused to consider his final appeal. So that seems to be it then. Freddie McConnell, who is the 34-year-old freelance journalist, gave birth in 2018 after suspending his hormone treatment. He'd hoped to challenge an appeal court ruling that motherhood is defined by being pregnant and giving birth, regardless of whether the person who does so is considered a man or a woman in law. So this man, just so I get this right, this man was this child's mother, because he suspended, yes, that's it, I get it, okay. The decision not to consider the case is a blow for LGBTQ plus rights. Stonewallers hope the law would recognise all parents for who they are. Just a bit of background, Mr. McConnell began medical transition with testosterone therapy in 2013. 2014 he underwent a double mastectomy. His passport and NHS records were changed to show he was now male, but he retained his female reproductive system, then gave birth after suspending hormone treatment and allowing his menstrual cycle to restart. Goodness me, no wonder I need to go to the Supreme Court. This is a tricky one, isn't it? Should we turn to Scott Halliday, who's Associate Family Law Solicitor at firm Owen Mitchell, and joins me now. Do you care to comment on the Supreme Court's view on this? Good morning, Mr. Halliday.
Good morning, Nick. I think it's very disappointing that the Supreme Court haven't heard this case or won't hear this case, but it is worth saying at the outset this may not be the end of the case, because there is in principle potential for Mr. McConnell and his legal team to try and leapfrog beyond the Supreme Court and possibly take the case directly to the European Court of Human Rights in Strasbourg. And so, although a lot of the press coming out of this in the last 24 hours is saying it's the end of the matter, there is potential that it might not actually be the end of this case.
I don't know whether we have the identity of the child, and I wouldn't want to say it anyway, so let's just, without being crude, call it Baby X, and I say it because I don't even know the gender. Doesn't Baby X have a right to know who his or her mum was?
Well, absolutely, and arguably that's the disappointment in the judgment, because with the Supreme Court not hearing the case, the current legal framework essentially means that this child, their relationship with their parent, in this case Mr. McConnell, but clearly it's beyond Mr. McConnell. There are many other people in a similar situation. That child's rights will not be respected, because of course their birth certificate is not actually going to record accurately in accordance with their lived reality.
No, but hang on, but in accordance with law and medicine, it will be the reality.
Well, it will be in accordance with law for as long as the current framework.
Okay, well, what about medical?
But that was the whole point about the case.
Who gave birth? Mr. McConnell gave birth to the child. You accept that?
That's correct.
As a mother?
No, because Mr. McConnell at the time of the birth had obtained a gender recognition certificate, and so in law...
But the baby came from Mr. McConnell's womb?
No, well, let me unpack it briefly, because you just said a couple of moments ago that...
Well, did it not? Did Baby X...
No, well, you've got to let me finish my sentence before you can critique it. So bear with me, because it's a nuanced point. It's a nuanced point, because actually, clearly all cases before the court are challenging some kind of law. So it's not necessarily a good idea to say, the law says X. Well, yes, but the point is the case was trying to change the law. And so actually, when Freddie McConnell gave birth, the reality of it is that he had obtained a gender recognition certificate, and so in law he was male. He is male.
But it was still from Freddie McConnell's womb the baby arrived.
As a point of biology, yes, but that's not actually the question.
So we've got biology on our side, and we've got medicine on our side, and currently we have law on our side. But you argue against all of those three.
Well, I'm not sure necessarily whether I'd posit it like that, because the law's on the side of people who it is, and that's the whole point of the legal system. The law is on the rights of people who have the power until the law changes. So to say that the law is on your side or our side is a little bit disingenuous, because of course the entire system works where people make claims and the law changes.
Don't you think potentially this might be rather confusing for Baby X?
I think it'll be more confusing for Baby X's in respects of looking at a birth certificate and not recognising in their parents what is stated on the birth certificate. And so, it's interesting that you ask about the right of the child on this, because arguably what's being lost in this is the sense that, in some ways a sort of heteronormative idea that children need mothers and fathers, or a mother and a father, whereas of course for quite some time now we've had varying family formations, male same-sex couples, female same-sex couples.
And so actually, many cases where the mum has been a man, born a man. Sorry, no, the mum has changed to be a man. There's not many of those cases.
Well, there isn't a mother.
So you don't even say that this man was at one point a mother, even despite the fact he gave birth.
He wasn't a mother when he gave birth, because he'd already obtained.
What was he then?
Well, he was a man because he'd obtained a gender recognition certificate. So in law, he was male.
You're telling me he was a man who gave birth?
That's correct.
Okay, all right. I'm grateful I'm not in this area of law, and I'm grateful for your time. Scott Halliday is Associate Family Law Solicitor at the firm Irwin Mitchell. Again, related to this, we need to play catch up here. 8:47 LBC News at 7:00.
The Housing Secretary says an announcement will be made in the next week on what England's tiered system will look like once the national lockdown comes to an end. Thousands of volunteers with no previous medical experience could be recruited to administer the coronavirus vaccine. And Boris Johnson's faced criticism after he reportedly called Scottish devolution a disaster. The weather mostly dry, cloudy and mild, heavy rain in northwestern Scotland, a high of 15 degrees.
LBC Travel Line Joanne, where the M25 has reopened in Hertfordshire, clockwise at junction 21A at the A405. Still very slow though, and also long delays continue on the North Orbital Road, which was part of the diversion route. The M4 in Bridgend, very slow eastbound to junction 36, and that's after an accident where one lane is closed. Delays continue of about half an hour on the M60 clockwise in Greater Manchester to junction 19 at the Middleton Road junction. That's because of an accident. And also still delays on the M8 eastbound in Glasgow to junction 22 at the M77. Now earlier on there was an accident. All the lanes are open now, but it remains extremely slow on the approach.
This is LBC.
To help keep our customers and colleagues safe, we've put several safety measures in place inside and outside our stores. Where possible, please shop one adult at a time, keep a safe distance from others, and wear a face covering. Our elderly and vulnerable customers, plus NHS and care workers, have priority access at all times. Sainsbury's.
Call Nick Ferrari now. 0345 6060 973 LBC.
This Black Friday, get super reliable Sky Broadband Superfast for just £25. And now with anytime calls. So everyone can stream, game and share. Because we guarantee you get the speed we promise or money back. It's now only £25 a month for 18 months plus £19.95 setup. For new and existing customers, hurry to sky.com. Offers November 30th. Download speed 59 megabytes. Speed to hub must months refund more at sky.com.
Let's face it, running a small business is already hard. There's sales, accounts, marketing, HR, the headaches are endless.
But that's where Golgi's B2B marketplace can help. Golgi takes the pain out of sourcing and procurement for your business. With Golgi, you can connect with a vast range of sellers, even ones you won't find on search engines. You just type in the product you need and the sellers come to you with offers, leaving you to do what you do best, running your business. Want to buy? Golgi. That's GOLLGI.com.
Your start it up is our warm it up. Your masterpiece is our get it in one piece. Your it's just never gonna fit is our reverse it in bit by bit. And your daily marathon when it's done is our ready to start work and we'll put the kettle on. Because your business is our business. Volkswagen Commercial Vehicles, working with you. Park assist optional extra. Driver assistance only. Driver must retain control at all times. Many van centres open late for bookings. See volkswagenvans.co.uk for details.
infrastructure for the corporations that come over and use those countries.
Well, it still keeps a whole of 14.5 billion quid in the budget.
Yeah, but the UK actually sees a return. If they don't do it out of benevolence or charity.
Right.
And also one thing, I mean, why are you not asking why shouldn't we be taxing billionaires, and the trillionaires and the people who can afford it? Instead, we're talking about this very little subject.
Well, if you look at the proportion, and my goodness me, I think tax changes are on the way, but the so-called rich have never paid a higher proportion of tax as they do currently, and we've not even looked at whatever this autumn or winter statement holds. Mike, thank you. You got your points across. You can hear the music. It means we must move on. Coming up after the news, they still won't say we will be free by Christmas.
Our hope and expectation is that we'll move back into the tiered structure, and that will see the heavy lifting in November, so that we can have a somewhat easier and more normal December.
A little over a month's time it'll be Christmas Eve, and then obviously Christmas Day. Could you cope with that? Plus the idea that, as I understand it, as well as paying road fund, fuel duty pay per mile when you took your vehicle on the roads. Does that have your support? After the news.
On Global Player and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation, this is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 9 o'clock, the Housing Secretary says a final decision will be made at the end of November on whether England's national lockdown will come to an end as planned. The blanket restrictions expire on the 2nd of December, with the plan to then revert to the three-tier system. Robert Jenrick says he's hopeful the nationwide measures won't need to be extended.
If they were going to be extended, then the government would have to come back to Parliament, make the case, and have a vote in the House. Our hope and expectation is that those will come to an end and we'll move back into the tiered structure, and that will see a significant easing in all parts of England, more in some parts than others, depending on the rate of infection.
Parts of the west of Scotland could move into the nation's highest level of coronavirus restrictions later this week. First Minister Nicola Sturgeon is due to announce her decision this afternoon. EasyJet has reported its first ever annual loss. Before tax, the low-cost airline lost £1.27 billion in the 12 months to the end of September. Passenger numbers halved to 48 million over the year as the coronavirus pandemic hit the aviation industry. Joe Biden has warned more people may die if Donald Trump doesn't concede his election defeat and help with the transfer of power. The president-elect has called for more coordination to tackle the COVID-19 outbreak. He called President Trump's refusal to acknowledge the election result totally irresponsible. Thousands of volunteers could be trained up to help deliver the coronavirus vaccine to patients. It's emerged St John Ambulance will be one of the organisations providing training to those who sign up. The charity's Chief Operating Officer, Richard Lee, says it's working with the government and Public Health England.
We're gearing up at the moment for our largest ever deployment to train our people and wider communities to support the NHS at mass vaccination centres, starting with flu in the early stages and then being ready to support should COVID vaccination on a large scale be ready for early 2021.
A study is suggesting mouthwash can be used to kill coronavirus in just 30 seconds. Cardiff University carried out the research in a lab and says an ingredient in mouthwash showed promising signs of being able to combat the virus. Now there'll be trials to see if it can reduce levels of COVID-19 in a patient's saliva. In the city a short time ago, the FTSE 100 was trading down 3 points at 64.17, and the pound buys $1.32 and €1.11. The weather, mild, windy and mostly cloudy, dry for many, but some rain at times for western areas. Heavy downpours for the northwest of Scotland, and a high of 15 degrees. From Global's newsroom, I'm Simon Conway.
This Black Friday, get super reliable Sky Broadband Superfast for just £25. And now with anytime calls. So everyone can stream, game and share. Because we guarantee you get the speed we promise or money back. It's now only £25 a month for 18 months plus £19.95 setup. For new and existing customers, hurry to sky.com. Offer ends November 30th. Prices may change during contract. Sky Fibre area speed varies by locations. Average download speed 59 megabytes. Speed to hub must drop below minimum download speed 3 days in a row. 1 month's refund, more at sky.com.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Nick Ferrari at breakfast.
Morning, it's 3 minutes after 9 on Tuesday the 17th of November. In a little over a month's time it will be Christmas, but what have you got planned? The government suggesting it's still too early to call. Could you really cope with a Christmas lockdown? Plus, get ready to pay by the mile. As I understand it, you'll still have road fund. This is to get rid of fuel duty. Motorists in Birmingham are less than impressed.
The roads are bad enough as it is, never mind helping to pay the government. They need to fix the roads, not pay the government.
I'm not driving every day, basically, so I rely on my car. So for them to charge us for driving, this is just another extra charge.
And more on that study you heard mentioned on the LBC News Bulletin, suggesting mouthwash can eradicate coronavirus within 30 seconds. If this is true, this incredibly virulent virus that has killed more than 52,000 people in this country, hundreds of thousands around, you're telling me now that it could be knocked out by mouthwash? Shouldn't we have got that a little earlier?
Nick Ferrari at breakfast. Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC.
Having done all I can to lift the mood in the previous 2 hours, talking about the fact that we have another second vaccine on the way, albeit it doesn't look as though it will be ready until the spring, and we've not even talked about the fact that the Oxford AstraZeneca one is powering through. You could be, as I said right at the top of the show, it's a bit like buses. You wait and wait and wait, and then three come along together, so we're in a far better place than we were. I now probably have to rain a little bit on the parade, because if you recall when we went through the front pages of our newspapers this morning, one of them, Daily Telegraph, has the rather gloomy headline, and I don't blame the journalists, it's the reality. Lockdown looms over Christmas. England, because remember we live in a developed country, England could remain shut beyond December the 2nd. Effect on virus cases is not yet clear. Earlier in the show I had Cabinet Minister Robert Jenrick with me, and I asked him whether he thought his family, his in-laws, whatever it is it might be, more than 6 I imagine, would they all be round his dinner table this Christmas?
Well, I hope so. I don't know that for certain yet. What I do know is that the new national measures will come to an end on the 2nd of December. That's a legal certainty. If they were going to be extended, then the government would have to come back to Parliament, make the case, and have a vote in the House. Our hope and expectation is that those will come to an end and we'll move back into the tiered structure, and that will see a significant easing in all parts of England, more in some parts than others, depending on the rate of infection. But we're obviously
the early data?
Doing the heavy lifting in November, so that we can have a somewhat easier and more normal December.
I asked about the early data. He said we're at least another week off from getting any indications because of the time lag. Let's go to Fraser Nelson, who's editor of The Spectator, and often regularly you read Fraser in the Daily Telegraph as well. Never mind you, can the nation cope with a lockdown Christmas, do you imagine, Fraser? Good morning.
It depends what you mean by cope. I mean, lockdown has huge side effects where the government doesn't really bother much to count these side effects. But there was a study in The Lancet the other day looking at the number of cancer deaths that are going up because people aren't getting diagnosed. There's people losing their jobs, there are businesses that are disappearing. Now, we can cope as a country. The question is what kind of country will emerge at the other side of lockdown. And one thing we're not very good at is looking at this in the balance, thinking, okay, on one side, lockdown might reduce the number of COVID infections, although to be honest, it hasn't done this time around so far. Infections haven't fallen, even though they were falling before lockdown. But on the other hand, lockdown will have these very damaging effects, not just on the economy, but on public health. So on balance, is it worth the risk? That's a calculation that is never done. And it's a bit of a flaw in our democracy, actually. I mean, ideally, you'd have the opposition, you'd have the Labour Party making these points, saying, okay, Prime Minister, you want to lock down, but what about the what about people who weren't showing up in A&E? What about the cancer deaths? What about the heart disease? What about the unemployment? Nobody is really making this point. So we're not, in Parliament anyway, so we're not having a very balanced discussion.
What factors should the Prime Minister and his colleagues take into account as and when, apart from the medical data and things you've touched on, Fraser, as and when they decide where England should be this Christmas? Because I note you've not even touched yet on the increase in attempted suicides.
Oh yes, I know. There is so much, which, I mean, that we've got a very confused picture about because the government isn't rushing to give us this. But perhaps the most fundamental question they should ask is whether lockdown works that much. I mean, right now, we're told at these briefings lockdown works as if it's a fact. But if you have our last lockdown, it didn't go down that much faster than it did in Sweden, where there wasn't a lockdown. If you look around the world, there are very mixed results here. So the question they should ask is, how sure are we that this lockdown is actually doing what we expect it to do? There's no doubt about the harm it causes, but how much good is it doing? And you really need to have a clear-eyed, evidence-based assessment of that before you lock down the country, or rename lockdown. That's what's more likely to happen.
And I know, underscoring your point, in Germany, you're probably aware of this, but to make my listeners aware, Angela Merkel is facing a rebellion. Regional leaders are ignoring her proposals for new lockdown restrictions. And if you'll allow, I know this is a bit of a characterisation, but Germans are normally pretty good at following rules and regulations, and they've had not a bad COVID. What do we take from that, Fraser?
That it's going to become more difficult for national leaders to pop up on television and saying, we decided it's time for lockdown, please all stay inside. Now, back in April, this worked because we didn't know very much about COVID. We didn't know who it would affect, we didn't know if it spread in schools, how it affected young people. Now we know a lot more about it, and people are able to make their own assessment on it. They can look around, and they look around what's happening in their community. And in parts of Germany, in parts of England, where there aren't much COVID, you have to ask, should we really be crucifying the local economy to extinguish a virus which is probably less than a threat than the consequences of lockdown? So it's not just devolution, it's right around the world. You're getting, because it's a regional virus, COVID. London, to be honest, hasn't been that badly affected by the second wave, not compared to the northeast.
Lastly, noting your political commentary that you provide for The Telegraph and The Spectator and on various television shows, a quick word on Boris Johnson, the fighting within Number 10 and the fact that he's having to, quote, work from home because he's been pinged. Fraser.
Well, this has come at the worst possible time for him. We're days away, a couple of days away perhaps, from crunch Brexit negotiations, the country in the middle of lockdown, and the Prime Minister chooses this time to have internecine warfare in Number 10. Him being isolated, it's bad, but not nearly as bad as the fact that things seem to be falling apart at Number 10 at exactly the time when the country needs them to hold things together.
Always enjoy speaking with you. Thank you for your time. Fraser Nelson, editor of The Spectator. Very good columnist for the day.
The Prime Minister may struggle to get that through Parliament without having to rely on Labour votes. I think there's increasing scepticism on his own backbenches about that case. And the sorts of people who are being critical of it are not now the sort of people who can be easily dismissed as fringe or marginal people. You've got very serious figures in the world of public health with a great deal of experience, a great deal of knowledge, who are essentially saying what Fraser was saying, that the evidence is ambiguous, uncertain and missing about the effectiveness of these measures.
How much does the public need a sort of shot in the arm to see that the restrictions of which they've put up, and the vast majority of people have, is actually getting us somewhere?
Well, I think this has been one of the big differences between an influenza pandemic, which was planned for, and the COVID-19 pandemic, that we know how to make influenza vaccines. So you could be very clear at the beginning of a new influenza virus that any restrictions were definitely not going to last more than 6 to 9 months, because that's how long it would take to create the vaccine. What we've had with COVID-19 is a much greater degree of uncertainty about if and when a vaccine would be possible. And there's still a good deal of uncertainty about exactly how quickly, about whether the current candidates will get approved as quickly as some people hope, how quickly they will be rolled out, what the logistical issues are. So there's all this sort of uncertainty about how long people are being asked to make these immense sacrifices for. And increasingly, I think, scepticism about the proportionality of the sacrifices to the to the actual risks of COVID-19, particularly as the medical treatments have improved.
Lastly, noting you're a professor of sociology, last week we heard about a vaccine on the way, 90% effective. Today there's one that's 95% effective. When there is sense that their help is on the way, how difficult is it to keep people closed up in the farm, locked down?
Well, I think it's feasible if there is a very clear timeline, and that is still missing, and it will be missing for another few weeks at least until the regulatory processes of vaccine approval are completed. And one of the things that's impressed me as somebody who sits on a different group which is involved in overseeing some of that is the absolute commitment of the scientists to doing things at their own speed and at their own pace and with the utmost rigour. So even if the politicians would like to have good news about vaccine approvals by Christmas, if the scientists are not absolutely certain about safety and efficacy, and we haven't seen the dossiers from the pharmaceutical companies yet, then the vaccines will not get approved.
I will leave it there. Thank you for your time. Robert Dingwall, Professor of Sociology at Nottingham Trent University. You sit on NerveTag, but we're speaking in a personal capacity in this instance. Your views, can you face, what is it, a month and a week or so away, Christmas Eve? Yeah, the idea, instead of the family coming around, you just sat there, still in your bubble. How would you take to that? Also coming up after the news, get ready to pay by the mile on our roads. It would be an attempt to do away with so-called fuel tax. What does the president of the AA, Edmund King, think?
The problem is that straight road pricing will not be popular, and it's perceived by many as a kind of poll tax on wheels.
More on that after this. 9:15 LBC News headlines. Simon Conway.
The Housing Secretary says it's the government's hope and expectation that England's national lockdown will be eased on the 2nd of December as planned. Thousands of volunteers could be given training to administer the coronavirus vaccine when it's ready to be deployed. EasyJet has made its first ever loss in its 25-year history. And the weather mostly dry, cloudy and mild, some rain in the west, a high of 15 degrees.
LBC Travel, I'm Joanne Webb in Hertfordshire. The M25's back open now clockwise at junction 21A at the A405. It was closed for around 7 hours after an accident. Open now, but still very slow. In Hampshire, the M271's closed in both directions between junctions 1 at the Brownhill Way and the Redbridge roundabout at the A33 following an accident. In Greater Manchester, there are delays for about half an hour on the M60 clockwise to junction 19 at Middleton Road. That's following an accident. And also in London, the South Circular Road is partially blocked eastbound to Forest Hill after an accident, busy on the approach.
Call Nick Ferrari now. 0345 6060 973 LBC.
Zing Flowers, a beautiful way to say I appreciate you. Order now at zingflowers.com. Amazing every time.
The first time my housemates see it, they're like, we all get in, seatbelts on, flick that switch to turn on the motor, and we're off. I say, connect me, and the bass goes, and everyone's loving it when we hit the road. Back home from another Mini Electric journey, we're like, search Mini Electric and don't just drive it, feel it.
At Ring, we've reinvented the doorbell. So no matter where you are or what time of day, you can watch over your home and the things you care about. Ring Video Doorbell streams HD video and two-way talk straight to your phone, so you can speak to whoever's at your door from anywhere.
Delivery.
Oh, great. Can you leave it round the back, please?
Sure, no problem.
And it's so simple, you can install it yourself in minutes. See, hear and speak to whoever's at your door from wherever you are with Ring Video Doorbell. Available at ring.com and selected retailers.
This is the sound of business owners bossing their day with Sage.
Fish delivery, bossed. Invoices, sorted.
Clients worked out, boss. Expenses smashed.
Tax return?
Take control of business with new financial tools from Sage. Boss it. Get 50% off for 4 months at sage.com. Terms and conditions apply.
-10. How fast could you boost your credit score with new Experian Boost? 6, 5, 4.
Whoa. Boosted already?
For the first time ever, you could boost your credit score instantly for free with new Experian Boost. Only at Experian.co.uk. Experian account linked to your current account is required. Score increase subject to status.
At Morrison's, selected chocolate pouches are now £2.50 each. Choose from Heroes, Celebrations, Cadbury's Dairy Milk, and many more. Morrison's, making Christmas special. Majority of stores and online, subject to availability, 350 grams to 450 grams. Offer ends 24th of November 2020.
At Bupa Dental Care, we appreciate you're probably fed up to the, well, back teeth, even front teeth, with things being cancelled, called off or closed. The good news is, we're still open. So whatever's been put on pause, your smile doesn't have to be one of them. We're here to provide a full range of COVID-safe private dental treatments at your local Bupa Dental Care practice. So book an appointment today at bupadentalcare.co.uk and get ready to take your smile off pause. A separate COVID-19 safety tariff will apply.
This Black Friday, get super reliable Sky Broadband Superfast for just £25. And now with anytime calls. So everyone can stream, game and share. Because we guarantee you get the speed we promise or money back. It's now only £25 a month for 18 months plus £19.95 setup. For new and existing customers, hurry to sky.com. Offer ends November 30th. Prices may change during contract. Sky Fibre area speed varies by locations. Average download speed 59 megabytes. Speed to hub must drop below minimum download speed 3 days in a row. 1 month's refund. More at sky.com.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
Right, come to your reactions concerning a lockdown for Christmas in a moment, but it's the roads. I haven't even really got into that. You're already bringing in numbers, so let's get into that straight away. And the idea of what's called a national road pricing scheme has reportedly been revived by the Chancellor as a green car revolution applies brakes to £40 billion of annual tax revenue. The Treasury is exploring ways in which Rishi Sunak can replace lost fuel duty and vehicle excise duty. You and I know that as car tax or road fund, as the shift to electric vehicles gathers place. Now, this was floated a long time ago, 2007, when Tony Blair was in power, so and then it was known as pay as you drive, but was dropped, it is reported, due to considerable opposition from motorists. However, a source says the Chancellor is very interested in the idea of road pricing. The Financial Times reported the current 2035 deadline could be brought forward to 2030 to help reach the government's target of net zero carbon emissions by 2050. Simon Williams is with the RAC and joins me now. So this doesn't... we are. This means that... Is that right?
More and more electric vehicles coming onto the road, and then it's looking very much like the end of the sale of new petrol and diesel vehicles will now be brought forward to 2030. So something's got to change going forwards. Fuel duty at the moment is charged at 58 or 57 pence a litre on every litre of petrol and diesel you buy. That brings in around £28 billion a year for the Treasury. Car tax or vehicle excise duty, as it's properly known, brings in about £6 billion for the DVLA. So you've got all of that, and of course more and more electric vehicles, they don't pay any duty at the moment on fuel, because they're charging on electric, obviously. So as I get more and more on the road, that revenue will disappear, and fuel duty has actually been declining for a number of years. It's only kind of stayed at 28 billion because of more and more cars coming onto the road.
Right. Where is the RAC on this idea?
I think we accept that something has to change going forwards, but what we're concerned about is making sure that any new system that's brought in is fair to all drivers, particularly when you've got a mix of electrics and petrol and diesels on the road. And so as long as it's fair, and we wouldn't have any problems with that, because obviously something does have to change as we go towards zero emission driving in the future.
Okay, so, I mean, how...
This is the question, and this is obviously what we were looking forward to seeing what the government has to say on this. There are various ideas that could form the basis of a new system, price per mile, which in effect isn't too different from what we have at the moment with fuel duty. The only variable there is how fuel efficient your vehicle is.
How would it be administered? How would you have to have a meter on your car, would you? Is that it?
This is it. We obviously have telematics devices at the moment, black boxes that people have for insurance. If you had one of those in every car, then in effect you would know when the car is being driven. There also could be an idea that you would pay more to use a motorway or a major road at a peak time of the day to try to kind of get people not to, to kind of try to kind of make the roads a bit quieter at certain times.
And worst case, do you envisage that in some instances, someone who has an older car would still have to pay fuel duty when she filled up with diesel or petrol, as well as having one of these meters? Could you imagine that?
This is we would see a new system being in place of, not as well as, an existing fuel duty system. I think that would be regarded by most drivers as being unfair. At the moment, drivers of electric vehicles don't pay any duty or any. They don't pay so much car tax.
Was the argument they should start lastly? Do we look at levying what I call road fund or car tax? Do we look at levying that on electric vehicles? Is that an idea?
It probably is at some point, but at the moment it's needed as an incentive to get more and more electric vehicles onto the road. I think that's a good thing because we do need to change. Obviously, emissions, particularly from diesel vehicles, are causing problems to health, and that things need to change in that direction. So I think we're in a situation.
I will leave it there, Simon. Thank you. Sorry, just to finish our conversation, grateful only because I want to get listeners on. Simon Williams, thank you. You're from the RAC, giving us a full background of where the organisation is on there. Eddie in Neath. What would this mean to you, Eddie? Good morning.
Hi, Nick. Thanks for taking my call. Yes, they want to charge £1.50 a mile. That would cost me £300 a week to go back and go to work. I also have a holiday caravan in West Wales, which is 55 miles away. That would cost me £165 a week. So all in all, it's over £24,000 a year. Am I paying this debt off myself?
I can see what you mean. How does this work out? Have you ever worked out what it costs you through fuel duty?
I haven't, no, but it's certainly not £24,000 a year.
No, you're totally opposed to this idea.
Absolutely. The caravan parks in Wales would all shut down. People wouldn't be able to afford to go there.
But if we're losing £28 billion, well, quite a slug of £28 billion out of the Treasury, and since that's for fuel duty, £6 billion for what I call road fund, the money's got to be made up somewhere, doesn't it?
Oh, you're back. Yeah. You're back with me. I put you on hold accidentally by pressing the volume control on my Bluetooth in-car entertainment device. Every fucking day. Here, listen, mate, it's fucking raining here. It's terrible. But I've had to come out. He's doing some work on their garages. It's fucking so noisy. I can't be in the birdhouse, mate. I've just had to get out the house. It's just too noisy. So what are they doing when they're going out and about then? They're just going out for coffees, are they, and stuff like that? Totally, mate. Yeah, totally. I mean, the only good thing, well, it's not a good thing, but at least, you know, with this type of lockdown, you know, as long as people have still got a little bit of money, they look for other opportunities. And our sales on the software is going up, mate. Not making much, mate, because since we bought the company, we haven't had a divvy up. But you know, so obviously I'm earning a lot less, you know, from it as opposed to when I was a consultant there. But nevertheless, you know, it's all good. I've got a couple of directorships in the pipeline that hopefully will come off nominee directors. So I don't have to do anything, you know. You know me, don't really want to work. Malta. Yeah, I will be, mate. I will be. But at the end of the day, I've got control, you know. So anything that I don't like, I'll just close it down. Doesn't seem to be at the moment, mate. No. I mean, he might still pull it off, but I tell you what, I'm so happy that I'm out of it. I really am. I mean, it went down below 3 cents a couple of weeks ago, and I don't know what it is now, but you know, below 3 cents. I mean, it don't take much to tumble a bit further, and then there'll be a landslide of people exiting. I just went out to my coffee shop that I go to out of Golden Sands because it's raining. I mean, they've got an awning that is sort of attached to the tea shop. You know, yeah, it's not much, is it, mate? Not much. Yeah, because it's raining, it's not fucking open. You did, didn't you? Has it done quite well now or not? Oh, well, that's nice, isn't it, eh? Yeah. 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 Yeah, good stuff, mate. So, how's your new relationship with the Chinese going? Yeah, but I thought you were still doing stuff with them under license or something. Yeah. And what about your new Oppo that you've got helping you out? Is he, has he hit the speed, hit the ground running, has he? Okay.